Welcome to Urania Universe. I am Urania, and in this video, I will provide a brief overview of the astronomy and ritual of Lammas, also known as Lughnasadh. This is video 5 of 8, in which I discuss these 8 significant points that the sun makes within its annual motion from our apparent view or perspective here on Earth. These 8 significant points are also known as 8 Sabbats that comprise the wheel of the year within the pagan tradition. And these 8 significant points are a beautiful way to connect with nature, connect to the cycles and rhythm of nature, and to reconnect to the divine energy within and without. Lammas is the halfway point between summer solstice and the autumn equinox. It is traditionally observed around August 1st. You could say sundown July 31st to sundown August 1st. And this point is marked astronomically to occur around, let's say, August 6th to August 8th, depending on the year, of course. And the main theme of this particular Sabbath is appreciation, acts of service, sacrifice, providing offerings to the gods or ancestors, and also the essence of manifestation and harvest. So, this cross quarter day is the halfway point between summer and autumn. Therefore, there is a strong essence of harvest, right? Or this is when we are beginning to harvest. And this is when fruits are beginning to grow on the trees. And as we get closer to the autumn equinox is when those fruits are really, really ripe. So you can say this is the season of ripening. This is the first harvest celebration of 3, the second being autumn equinox, and the third being Samhain. And really, this is the time in which we are just showing gratitude. That's one of the things that I've loved as I've been walking and myself through the wheel of the year and learning about the practices, the history, and the rituals of these specific times. There's such a deep appreciation for nature and for the gift of nature and the nourishment and sustenance that is all around us and the abundance even. And so with the celebration of Lammas, or this particular time of year in general, there is a strong theme of abundance, which we tend to see that as well. There's always the theme of like either coming into abundance or just being in the essence of abundance. And Lammas is the coming into and really witnessing the abundance of the things around you and literal seeds coming to fruition, intentions coming to fruition. And so this is a time where we're really seeing the fruits of our labor. And there are many cultures that observe this particular cross quarter day or Sabbath. It's not just in the pagan tradition. However, the word even of Lammas has roots in Old English that literally means loaf mas. So essentially a lot of wheat, a lot of bread, right? So again, pointing to abundance. The other name for this particular Sabbath, if we're considering the pagan tradition, is Lughnasadh. Lughnasadh has Irish roots, which pay homage to a deity or a god that is considered to be the god of heroes. It is a celebration of victories, overcoming obstacles. And so that is a strong theme within this particular part of the year. So there are many cultures that observe this time of year, in addition to the English parts or European parts of the world. So we have with indigenous people, the Opi tribe, they celebrate the abundance of corn, right? So they have their corn festivals and their celebration ensures beautiful harvest, or they celebrate the insurance and the appreciation of a beautiful harvest and fertile grounds for the next season. And so there is a dance that they do called the Moroa. Oh, I just looked up the pronunciation before I started recording this. And of course, I am probably butchering it, but it is essentially the water moon dance or the growing moon dance. And so this dance is done in appreciation and to ensure a beautiful harvest and the coming of the fertility for the next growing season. So also in Nigeria, they have a festival called the New Yam Festival, in which they celebrate yam, and they celebrate this with singing, dancing, and drumming. So there's a lot of movement, vitality, and just dance and just activity of being in celebration with community and really just embodying that life force energy of the sun and the abundance and the achievement and success. And in Ghana, there is a festival called Homowo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and it essentially means hoot at hunger. So during this time, they are also celebrating with dance, singing, and drumming, and they are also preparing special food and ritual and offering this food to the ancestors. And so this particular day of the year or this time of the year is really, really significant and powerful for many cultures. And I'm sure that you can think of just different cultures, and maybe even it's your own family that celebrates this particular energy shift within just witnessing things around you. And I know one of my favorite things to do, especially now that I'm a mom of a young one, is going apple picking. That's so much fun. And the apple picking usually happens between this time of year of Lammas and the autumn equinox. So definitely closer to autumn equinox, like sometime in early September is like the peak time to go. And it's a favorite thing to do. The astronomy of Lammas essentially points to the moment where the sun reaches the in between or the halfway point between 0 degrees Cancer and 0 degrees Libra along the celestial equator. This generally occurs, again, either if you're in the northern hemisphere, this is going to occur around August 7th or August 8th. If you're in the southern hemisphere, this is actually going to be experienced in reflection, where it is between the 0 degree point of Capricorn and 0 degrees of Aries along the celestial equator. This is in the year of 2023 for the Northern Hemisphere. It's happening around August 7th, 2023 at 2:24 p.m. Eastern Time here from the United States. If you are wanting to know that exact time. If you want to look at it specific to your location, say if you're in the Southern Hemisphere or anywhere in the world, definitely check out Solar Events Calculator, as it is an amazing resource to get the exact time for your location. And there's a lot more on this website. And I believe there are calculators for the moon cycles as well with the sun. And so it is definitely a website to check out, and you can find the link for that in the description of this video. And so at this point, this time of the year, again, the sun is descending from its most northern point in the northern hemisphere and its most southern point in the southern hemisphere, but essentially it is on its descent from its point of glory and into the underworld, right? In a sense, with the summer solstice that is coming into the sun's glory, the peak essence of the sun. And now within that peak essence, right, or as the sun has reached the top of, you could say, the mountain or its most northern point, the sun has overcome, coming out of the underworld and traveling into more of a divine, powerful expression of itself, and being able to bestow the light and energy, life force energy to planet Earth, essentially, and all of her inhabitants. So now, once we've reached summer solstice and we are approaching Lammas, this is essentially the waning half of the year. And if you even take into consideration the moon cycles, we had that full moon experience, right, where the sun and the moon are in opposition, and the sun or the moon is fully illuminated, right, fully seen and visible. That is the sun at summer solstice. So once that peak is reached within the phase, then naturally, as everything happens in duality and in a cycle, the sun begins to descend back to its most southern point, back into the darkness or into the underworld. And so there is this release and disseminating of its energy. And so in the period between summer solstice and the autumn equinox is the point, as I mentioned, where we're beginning to see the fruits grow on the trees. We're beginning to see the berries and, even the grapes and stuff growing on the vines. And as we get closer and closer to that autumn time of the year, the fruits will get bigger, juicier, darker, and they're ripening, right? And so the best way to connect with this time of year is to actually observe the world around you around this time to really get a sense of what personal correspondences are coming up for you, what you're seeing within the natural cycles of essentially the sun and the environment, even the people, the animals. What is the vibe? What is the flow at this time of year? In my own personal environment here in my home, I am beginning to see a lot more of my flowers blooming, such as sunflowers. They haven't come into full bloom yet, but the buds are popping up. I also have the echinaceas popping up. We have more roses coming through, black-eyed Susans, and I'm also beginning to see the little the flowers coming forth on my plant, my tomatillos plant, as well as the little teeny tiny tomatoes starting to grow. So they're really, really tiny. I mean, tomatillos are tiny anyways, but they haven't gotten to their full grown state. I'm also beginning to see the walnuts falling off the trees, the walnut fruit falling off the trees in my neighborhood, as well as apples beginning to grow on my neighbor's tree. So there's a lot coming to life, coming to fruition, and almost like this overflow essentially. So yeah, pay attention. This is a time where you'll start to see acorns falling. You'll start to see the fruits slowly coming into being, where they will ripen as we get closer to the autumn equinox. So in a sense, that is the best way to observe the astronomical side of things and how the shift or the transition in the sun's cycle is influencing life here on earth, and how we are literally beginning to reap the rewards of what we sown, or beginning to see the fruits of our labor. On to the ritual of Lammas. So traditionally, the celebration or observance of Lammas tends to occur around August 1st. However, if you want to connect with the astronomy and enjoy a bit of that grace period to gather your resources and your tools, the exact time astronomically is around August 7th, August 8th, as I mentioned. And if you want to integrate the astrology, this is around 15 degrees Leo. And actually, when I looked at my astrology software and comparing that to the solar events calculator, the sun does in fact reach 15 degrees of Leo on August 7th. So I thought that was a beautiful synchronicity, and that felt very divine and integrated with the science or nature of spirituality and the essence, and you could say spirit of nature essentially, and integrating those aspects. And so what was really interesting to me is that, again, I'm here speaking in the year of 2023. And as someone who's been practicing off and on witchcraft, ritual, tarot, astrology, and the like for about almost 20 years now, there's definitely been a wave or a shift of focus and attention to the particular time of year of August 8th, which is 8/8, right? And this is considered to be the Lionsgate portal. And around 2017, 2018 is when I really got introduced to the Lionsgate portal through a teacher, and I really felt connected to it, or I was really fascinated by it. And I was doing a little bit of research. There's not necessarily a lot, well, back then it wasn't. Now I'm sure there's probably a lot of different beliefs and practices and theories of the origins and what it actually means. But funny enough, the deeper I got into astrology, a lot of astrologers were like, there's no astrological significance of this, or I even felt like there was no astronomical significance of this as well, that I've heard in the different discussions and conversations around the Lionsgate portal. However, this year, as I'm doing my notes, and I also had a client ask me about what is the significance, like what can you share with me about Lionsgate? And I had to sit with it. And I realized once I saw when the cross quarter point happens astronomically, it just really drew my attention that, oh my goodness, there's an alignment, there's a synchronicity. And it's such an interesting shift of within modern day where the observance of Lionsgate is always August 8th. And they call it also an infinity portal, right? Because we have the 8-8. And 8, if you turn 8 sideways, it is infinite, the infinity symbol. And so essentially, this really struck a light bulb. I had an aha moment, and it made so much sense that I'm like, okay, there is some significance here with this particular energy, right? And as I mentioned before, just briefly in the beginning, there is this celebration or awareness of abundance. And when we think about even the nature of this flow with the infinity, there's a cycle and there's always coming back and there's always a flow. And that speaks to the whole entire cycle of our connection with the sun, right? How we orbit the sun and we see from our view on here the way the sun moves through our skies and the cycle that it makes. And yes, it's not an infinity symbol, but the cycle and the energy of the way Earth, you could say, responds or dances within its natural cycle with the sun, there's definitely this infinite element of abundance or of just a dance, essentially, a point of reflection. And so I really felt this strong connection of the Lionsgate. I was like, okay, there's something there. And I feel connected at this point with the astronomy aspect and the astrology, right? And so at cross quarter point, again, it is a halfway point between these quarter moments. And so the cross quarter days are actually considered to be the greater Sabbats, the greater moments. And they are also considered, or at least one of these cross quarter points, cross quarter days, is considered to be a time where the veil is thin, right, between the worlds, or you could say two of the days, and it's Samhain and Beltane. Samhain being the day between the thinness of the veil between life and death, or on both sides, right? So Samhain is moving more into death and darkness and decay, right, in the rest period and coming back within. And then Beltane, on the flip side, is the time in which we are coming out of the darkness and entering the space of light, right? Entering the space of life and growth and things coming into being. And so that's where the veil is. Now I am encouraged and curious, and I invite you to also consider these two opposite moments on this axis, right, of Lammas and Imbolc, right? Because Imbolc is going to be the opposite point of the axis to Lammas, right? And so Imbolc is the halfway point between winter solstice and the spring equinox, right? So there's still some essence of coming in from the dark and moving into the light in that regard. And then on the other side is Lammas, right, between the halfway point between summer solstice and autumn equinox, where we're again moving from the dark and into the light. And so I haven't had a lot of time to sit with this to give a full, like, grounded perspective on what I think, but I will definitely share that here soon. But there's definitely some significance here. And it is a theme of light and dark, right? Which is that duality and can be that reflection aspect of the infinity symbol and the orbits around and how we come together and meeting and then separate and come together, which is a major theme here as we experience Earth. So I thought that was an interesting synchronicity or realization. And so now I feel really grounded with the Lionsgate, and just that even being considered some sort of portal, cycle, or reflection, right? And there's so many ways you can dive deep into that. And so I invite you to do so. Correspondence for Lammas include, again, the abundance the element of abundance, appreciation, prosperity is a big one, reflection, which works very well again with this 8-8 portal, infinity portal. There's appreciation, honoring of nature, of mother, of cycles and the ancestors, and the essence or experience of overcoming obstacles. Gods associated with this particular Sabbath, it includes Osiris. And so if you are familiar with Osiris's story, he is essentially killed by his brother Set. And this is the point throughout the whole cycle. So Osiris, you can say, can be also considered to be the sun or connected to the sun cycle. So when Osiris goes into the underworld, that's, when we're going through the point of the sun on its waning part of its cycle, right? And so this point in time is just after the sun has reached its glory, right? So the rebirth of Osiris, and the rebirth of Osiris can be considered to be the summer solstice. And this point of time, it also is somewhat close to the Egyptian New Year. But that Egyptian New Year essentially is the rising of Sirius, which is a little bit later in August, I believe, maybe even September now. Don't quote me on that. But this is the point in which Isis is very happy that Osiris is reborn, essentially, or came back to life. And so there is an abundance of tears, which corresponds to the flooding of the Nile and the abundance of water and the abundance, if by the Nile overflowing, then there's an abundance of crops and the ability to nourishment for the soil, right? And so we get Osiris as the patron god for this time that you can connect with, and Isis as the patron goddess. We also have Hathor in consideration to the abundance of just life here on earth and the growing of crops and just agriculture, you could say, and nurture and sustenance and that divine mother essence. Fortuna is a goddess that you can connect with during this time, as she is the goddess of good fortune, of prosperity, of abundance, right? And that's a goddess that you would want to honor with offerings, as she has some power within fate, essentially. And on the flip side, with more gods, we have Ganesha, and Ganesha is a really good deity that is a representation of overcoming obstacles, and Ganesha can help you to break through any limitations and obstacles that you're experiencing at this time, which will then really bring forth that embodiment and experience of success and achievement of victory. And again, Osiris and Ganesha are also connected to prosperity and abundance. So flowers that correspond to this time, of course, you have sunflowers, and those will come more into fruition around as we get closer to the end of the cross quarter season, right? If it's between August 1st, essentially here in the Northern Hemisphere, and autumn equinox. So it'll be like kind of the end of August and probably the end of February for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere. That's a really like a staple flower for lammas. And then some of the symbols we have is corn, is also the cornucopia, the basket of fruit, and that kind of moves into also the autumn equinox, and also the pentacle as a representation of earth and protection and power within nature, and within the physical manifestation of our virtues, of our appreciation and connection to the divine and to the nature and mother around us. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't already checked out the other videos within the series, please do. You can find that in the playlist here on my channel called The Wheel of the Year. And I'm really excited to share with you all the next coming Sabbaths. So please stay tuned and like the video and subscribe. Thank you.